Today is a very special day. We are here in New Zealand, but not just anywhere. We are in the center of the South Island, the middle of Middle Earth, at Mount Sunday, the Rohan capital of Edoras.
Without a doubt, my absolute favourite location in all of the Lord of the Rings is Edoras, or Mount Sunday in the Canterbury region of the South Island, one of the most stunning filming locations from the movies in all of New Zealand.
Today is extra special because we're taking our first steps on a new journey for Zorpazorp and for Middle Earth content on YouTube as we kick off our new series, Film Location Warhammer. Over the next few years, we're going to be visiting every single filming location for Middle Earth and building amazing dioramas and wargaming scenery of those locations on those locations. And we're kicking it off right here, right now, as we build Edoras on Edoras.
And Rohan will answer.
Now, long-time viewers of the channel will know that I've actually built Edoras twice before, and my first attempt was actually the second and third videos on this channel, and back in Australia, I still have that first board. Now, Larissa, the kids, and I haven't actually moved to New Zealand yet. We've booked our flights for mid-January, but I'm here for a week in November for some secret filming I probably can't talk about yet, and also to play in New Zealand's biggest Lord of the Rings Warhammer tournament, which this year is in Christchurch. So I simply could not resist the temptation to hire a car and drive down to Edoras for a single day and begin this epic project in style. Because we've only got the one day, we're going to be focusing on building a small display board for my Rohan army that I'm taking to the tournament tomorrow.
Then that display board will act as the perfect starting point for a truly massive mega board that we'll be tackling next year once the new studio is set up here in New Zealand. And there is no better place to begin that board than right here at the gates of Edoras.
So now we come to the first parts of the location that saw some serious film set construction. Here, down at the base of the slopes of Mount Sunday, we have the site of the gatehouse and the outer wall. Now, this section was only about 100 meters wide when it was built, just large enough to shoot all of the close scenes around the gatehouse, and the rest was extended digitally for all the gorgeous sweeping wide shots. Now, because we've only got the one day and we don't have my full workshop handy in the back of a van like we will once we've moved over, we're going to give ourselves a little bit of a head start. So about a month ago, I laid the groundwork for this build that began by carefully removing the original gatehouse and some of the palisade from my original board. This board is actually soon to be sold once it's been reconditioned, but I loved the idea of keeping a memento from the original build and working it into the new build just to keep touch with such an important piece of Zorpazorp's history, just like I did by recycling my old Osgiliath board for our Minas Tirith mega board. With the old gatehouse salvaged, I grabbed a little picture frame, cut down some foam board to fit, and carved a little path contoured into the foam, working some little cartwheel ruts into the muddy ground, and then gave the foam a nice prime with stone finish paint to hide the awful texture of that green XPS foam, and gave the piece a simple base toning of stippled browns. I trimmed down some of the old palisade wall that I'd been forced to rip up into two smaller palisades and recarved the end faces to have a nice little continuation of that wall from either side of the gatehouse to the edge of the display board. And then I gathered up a whole bunch of modeling supplies, threw them into a box, and shipped them over to Maddie Grace, one of my awesome Patreons and all-round top bloke who is based in Christchurch, and then picked them up this morning from his place, and after a quick trip to New Zealand Bunnings to grab a few flammable materials we couldn't post,
Batteries, old and new.
it was time to begin our journey to build Edoras on Edoras.
Shit, there it is. There it is. Trying to keep my eyes on the road, and Edoras is proving quite challenging. All right, we can see it off in the distance.
Yeah.
In late November, we are deep into spring, but Sauron had loosed some incredibly unseasonable snowfall just 2 nights prior.
It was definitely not this deep last time. I don't really know where we're gonna cross.
The surrounding southern Alps are now stunningly tipped in white, but the snowmelt did create some unforeseen challenges.
Oh, this is touch and go. And the leap of faith. Yay! Nailed it.
Mount Sunday is a 2.5 hour drive from Christchurch on reasonably good roads and sits on a combination of Department of Conservation Nature Reserve and private land owned by Mount Potts Sheep Station. A big hello to the folks at Mount Potts who we bumped into a few years back when we first visited on holiday. You can visit the filming locations on specific 4-wheel drive tours or simply park in the car park and hike the 20 minutes yourself up to the location as we're doing today.
So right here on the slope of the hill, you can actually see where they laid the foundation for the palisade and the outer wall. And I think maybe just up here, we might actually have the gatehouse. Right about here would have been right underneath the archway. The path is sort of sloping up to this where Gandalf and the three hunters rode on in. What better spot to start crafting? So we've got over the first hurdle. Our pieces have arrived relatively intact. The two gatehouses are in good shape, a little bit of nicks here and there that we can fix pretty easily, but the gate itself is much more worse for wear as it just took off down the hill because it's made of balsa wood and this wind is pretty fierce. So first we're gonna start slapping that all together and get this structure locked down tight. Brilliant, just Edoras in the background. No big deal, no big deal.
Edoras is covered in a blend of tussock and super thorny gorse bush, and although they are spiky, the latter actually makes a reasonable windbreak. So Bo and I found a little spot just down from the gatehouse amongst what would have been the barrows of the Kings of the Mark and started tackling the first part of the build, reassembling the balsa structures and mounting them to the foam. This was done exclusively with well-bond PVA and wooden skewers to give us long-term strength and a fast physical bond, essential in this wind. I started with the two gatehouses, and then once those were lined up, I pinned in place the rather fragile gate tower and then set about gluing in all the small details that I'd carefully removed, like the large and small ladders interconnecting the upper platforms, as well as some smaller broken wooden details which had been damaged in transit. The gorgeous landscape around us is protected by the Department of Conservation, so just like the films before us, it was vital that we did not let a single foreign element, a stray chunk of balsa, postage and packing materials, or even a single fibre of static grass escape into the landscape around us. So in between helping me film, my assistant Bo channeled his inner treebeard to protect that natural beauty.
It's very windy. Let's go find a new spot to do some paint work.
But before we dive into painting, a lot of what I do here at Zorpazorp is about trying to make new stuff, whether it's a massive board or a new style of content like today's Edoras video. All of that means I need to learn new skills or sharpen up old ones, and that's where Skillshare can help. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of online classes, and there are so many different courses to try out, from business and finance right through the full creative spectrum. I've been learning about 3D camera tracking in Adobe After Effects from Jake Bartlett to help with all the complex VFX in the Horus Heresy campaign, and it has been absolutely invaluable. The first 1,000 people to use the link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare down in my description, so now is the perfect time to invest in yourself. With a Skillshare membership, you can engage in your hobbies and passions all year long. It's the perfect way to start and finally keep your resolutions for the new year and make 2023 the year you perfect a new creative hobby, land a new career, or launch your business. Try out a risk-free 30-day trial to test it out for yourself. With the structures locked down, we moved up the slope to sit just under the rocky precipice that Metaceld and the upper city were built upon, and set about doing some light paint work with browns and bones to touch up all of the dodgy exposed balsa I'd created when I ripped the pieces apart. It was at this moment, perched on a weird little seat-shaped rock and looking out over the approach to Edoras that Gandalf and the three hunters traversed, that I was pretty blown away. It might only be for today, but this is a pretty amazing view from my office window. Meanwhile, Bo got to work on some Rohan-themed drawings for his stunning Instagram. If any of you folks don't know Bo, he's my incredibly talented offsider here at Zorpazorp, but he's also a wicked artist specializing in Middle-earth and Star Wars-themed iconography. His Insta is always linked down in the channel description, so go and give him a follow and buy some of his prints. He also designs our merch, which you can get at zorpazorpmerch.com. With the paint cleaned up, we headed down into the barrows before the gates to nestle ourselves amongst the stunning tussock grass, which is so synonymous with Rohan landscapes, whether it's here at Edoras or in the rolling plains of central Otago, a spot we will be visiting plenty of times next year. Up first is the super easy to apply static grass tufts from Geek Gaming. I actually used a mix of old prototypes, but they are mostly made from dead grass and spring grass blends, which you can find on my online store, zorpazorp.com, link down below, and are fantastic for location work because they are beautifully stable pieces that self-adhere to the board with no need for an applicator or messy glues. I built these up quite heavily across the board, especially all around the structures, to simulate the grass growing in regions where water would pool and foot traffic would be minimal. I also began to shape our road by making a small center line of grass between the wheel ruts by ripping up tufts into small chunks for little details.
So the tufts are down and looking fantastic, but the next couple of phases, the flock and the sprays and the aggregates, they're not something we can do out here in this beautiful location, this conservation department area. So we're going to take this back to the car and apply all of those in a nice, safe, secure environment. And then it's time to paint a few minis to make this board look truly fantastic.
Down in the back of the rental RAV4, deep into the boot and out of the wind, it was time to lay down the bulk of our ground covering, but we hit a little snag. I actually forgot to pack my Geek Gaming PVA, so I had to try and use my weld bond, but unfortunately I totally misjudged the drying time and put down a whole layer over the board, and the whole layer dried super fast before I applied any grass. I only realized this, of course, once I'd set up my static grass applicator and dumped a bunch of 2mm dead grass straight on the board, only to knock it off a moment later and send it cascading into the back seat of the RAV. But it does highlight the importance of doing this stuff in the car. Maybe one day if this channel format works out, and boy I hope it does because I just want to do this forever, we can build like a custom mobile studio / camper van to do all the messy work in that we can't do out on location, and we won't have to drive back and forth to the workshop at home. We'll have to think of some sort of badass name for it, maybe Shadowfax or Zorp Camper. Ooh, what about Battle Camper? Yeah, that sounds awesome.
That basically does make him a threat to me.
Get f***ing wrecked, New Zealand.
Who must be destroyed at all costs.
In the meantime, to fix our static grass problem, I decided to soak the board in isopropyl alcohol and Geek Gaming Matte Scenic Sealant, which helped reactivate the weld bond PVA a little bit, as well as just creating a wet surface that I could work into. I built up a mix of static grass, foam flock of greens, browns, and yellows, little spots of clump foliage for that kind of extra foliage element, and then grabbed a little bit of gravel from the road base that was used in the car park, just to give it some rocks and gravel around the place, and then sealed that all down super tight with another coat of isopropyl alcohol and scenic sealant. Luckily, in the New Zealand sun coming in through the car window, this dried super fast, so it was soon rock solid and ready to head back out on location.
Everything's starting to dry and it's looking really good, but the wind has got fierce. Doesn't matter, we're still going to the top. It's time to go up to the Golden Hall of Medusel.
A massive shout out to my beloved Patreons. You guys have been so behind me lately through the ups and downs of YouTube life, and having your support is not only super critical for feeding my family, but so damn useful for keeping my hobby mojo up. Chatting to everyone in the Discord and seeing your work come through is just baller, so a huge thank you to these legends, and a big shout out to Maddie Grace for his help on this project, and all the other Megazorptrons. You guys are true heroes of legend.
We've climbed all the way to the top. We are right now where the Golden Hall would have sat, right under Medusel. It is an absolutely gorgeous vista, but this is the strongest wind I've ever experienced in my life. I'm literally leaning back into the wind right now. I'd say it's at least 100 kilometers an hour. I don't think we're going to be able to do a great deal of painting up here. This is without a doubt the most insane thing I've ever done for this YouTube channel. Bo and I are basically hiding here in the top of this little rocky escarpment right under Medusel. I've got the board here, it's looking great. We're going to see if we can get a little bit painted. I might try and get some layers down on Aragorn. I've got 2 massive bags of paints. They've managed to survive the plane trip over, which is great, nothing's exploded. I was clearly very optimistic. I think I might use 3 paints before we quit this. And I've got 2 brushes. I've brought no paint water, so I guess we'll be licking our brushes clean in between colors. Got my whole Rohan army here as well. It's basically all painted. I've just got a few key details on some heroes left. So my Rohan army that I'm running at the tournament tomorrow is young Aragorn riding with Thengel, Theoden's father. So this is the perfect little display board as they ride out to war against the Dunlendings. We've got a little bit of work left to do on Aragorn's armor, just some nice kind of reds and greens and golds, and then he is going to be ready. Hell, the lid of my foam case just flew away. That is long gone.
After sprinting off down the hill to find the sheet of foam impaled on a very helpful gorse bush, we returned to our sheltered nook to get down some paint, although it does make me wonder just how much film equipment was constantly trying to make escape attempts during principal photography. So as I got painting in this stunning landscape, it really did bring home the challenges that Dan Henner and Grant Major and their teams would have had bringing this location to the screen. The wind, the remote location, the limited access forest, the conservation land. It's utterly remarkable filming happened here at all. On my very last project before I left the film industry, I actually had the great privilege to work as Dan Henner's assistant props master, and one of my most special memories from my film industry days is sitting with him in a Queensland rainforest, hearing stories about the challenges of building Edoras during one of the many moments of downtime that can happen on a film set. A big hi to Dan and Chris if you're watching. I hope you guys are well.
You gotta do what you gotta do when you're at the top of a mountain. All right, brush is clean. I'm giving up on Aragorn. That is too hard in this wind. It's too fine detail, but I do have Gamling's cloak to finish. This is my beautiful Gamling conversion. It's not actually Gamling, it's a Gamling model, but this is representing Grimbold's daddy, Forbold. Oh no, I haven't brought it. I brought the other,
50 face and not the one.
damn it, okay, it's fine. We'll just do straight gory red. I've also realized that I forgot my wet palette, so my shoe could be in my palette. Time for the wet palette of champions.
Gamling's broad cloak was a nice flat surface area which was much easier to target in the fierce wind and bright sun, which wasn't helped by me forgetting my glasses, so I got down some lovely green and red wet blends, though this was exceptionally difficult with the conditions drying the paint on my shoe, my brush, and my model exceedingly quickly, and with only spit to thin my paint, it was a fairly doomed attempt. Sadly, we looked up towards the Southern Alps behind the Helm's Deep filming location across the plain, and we saw a huge cloud front marking an oncoming storm. Apparently, Saruman wasn't done with conquering Rohan yet, so with Bo lying on the ground trying to hold Edoras to the hilltop, we grabbed some finished shots of the board, but it was too windy to display even the little shingle roof, let alone my army. So then we legged it back to the car with the rain and snow advancing behind us and flew down the road to get back to Christchurch for the big event tomorrow. If you want to see some footage of the army in action, check out my mate Adam's channel 3D Games, who filmed the game against his Isengard force. The video is linked down below.
That's just rude, I'm sorry.
No, you're not. I'm not.
This has been the craziest thing I've ever done on this channel. It is wild up here today, and this is a dream come true for a long time. And I just can't believe I am holding Edoras on Edoras after I have built it right here on the filming location. In the coming years, I cannot wait to bring you guys more and more Middle-earth locations in the locations they were filmed. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy this new format. Let me know down in the comments below if you're excited about it, and I'll see you in the next one. I just built Edoras on Edoras.